begin. So I thought Flora Yang kind of invited us into a little conversation right off tonight. She is the author of the first piece we read for tonight. Our desert mothers and our mothers. So I'm going to emphasize our mothers. Glad to have you all back. I'm Sister Joan herself in the flesh. Yeah. Welcome to everybody online. Nice to see you too. So here we are. So she kind of foxed me. Laura did. I don't know her. But the way she starts out describing, this can be on first, she started out describing. So that's our goal tonight. What is ecofeminism? So she raised this question, but she described these things first. Bamboo toothbrushes. I'm sorry, I didn't know there were any. Homemade bar soaps, canvas tote bags full of farmers market produce, sleek, reusable cups and metal straws, and a $30 roll of cotton cloths being sold as reusable paper towels. So then she asked this question, does this description sound like your environmental lifestyle? Well, no.
Kind of.
Kind of. And then she goes into things her mother told her. So I'm wondering what your mother told you. I do remember we did not like the crusts on bread, and she did not think we should throw them away. That was one. Wasn't as good for the jelly. Yeah. So take a minute to think about what comes to your mind. What did your mother say? Put the candy wrappers in the wastebasket.
Turn the lights off when you leave a room. Always.
Well, tell each other.
My mother.
How long are we going to have for this?
About 4 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to.
5 minutes.
So this is right here in the group. Our group.
Yes.
I don't remember my mother giving paying too much attention. I mean, we always ate on ceramic or china plates. We didn't have paper plates. Sorry, you're good. I'm just trying to see your troubleshoot. So I'm just quickly.
We always had a garden. My mother always
That's
canned,
true.
and my grandmother.
That's true. We did can too. That is true.
And it was food was
in groups. Just because otherwise they won't be able to.
meat, potatoes, and vegetables.
Thanks for you.
That is a very important part of that. And we didn't use much plastic at all.
No.
We had any plastic.
Melmac. I remember when my mother
Melmac,
had
yeah.
Melmac.
And we
dishes
didn't
that-
have dishwashers. We washed around.
Of course.
And we wrapped up sandwiches for them in the field, but we used wax paper and little brown bags. I don't know where wax paper comes in. Environmental issues probably not very good, but.
She cleaned. She was incredible. She was a stay-at-home mom, so she was an incredible housekeeper.
Oh, really? I bet you learned how to do that.
Yes, I did. And I did, and all my children
Really?
learned this.
So did you grow up in a city or?
Yes, it was a town of about 28,000.
Okay.
So, yeah, Austin and
Oh,
so,
Austin.
yeah.
Well, you're lucky. My mother was a terrible housekeeper. And I learned very well how to not be a good housekeeper.
Very good.
And she had a lot of other interests.
It isn't hard.
Some are old timers. But the question there, is this your typical environment? Does it reflect your environmentalist lifestyle?
Some of them, yeah, somewhat.
Someone?
Well, now that,
And I just have to tell you, this is gonna sound crazy. I'm Christine. Hi, everybody. The bamboo toothbrushes have been available on those Delta overnight flights with a little tiny thing of toothpaste, which I was very surprised by.
Probably way less.
So is that what makes them special? Because they go with an airplane ride?
Well, I thought that was kind of unique because they're trying to reduce plastic. They're not serving in plastic cups anymore. They're serving in paper cups.
So Delta is not serving in paper cups,
They weigh less.
Plastic.
in
Yeah.
plastic.
It's on, is it on? Yeah. Well, one thing that I really remembered in reading this book is that when I lived on the farm with my grandparents a lot, and under the sink was a pail.
Yeah.
And in that pail, you'd put all your scraps.
Yeah.
All your scraps of food, and then that pail would be, it was in where you wash your hands in a little room. And then, but somebody would take it, grandpa would take it out and give that to the pigs when it was full. And so,
What did you call that pail?
this slop pig.
Yes, that's what we call ours.
It's not a compost.
But when I started composting now, I thought, well, this is like a slop.
Yeah,
Name.
no indoor plumbing.
How about online? Does anybody have anything to share? Go ahead, Kathy.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so my paternal grandmother used to take all the crusts that we didn't eat and my cousins didn't eat or whoever didn't eat, and she would keep them in a bowl in the refrigerator with a plate over it, and then put all the ends of the breads and all that kind of stuff, and then eventually make bread pudding out of it.
Yeah.
Oh,
my grandma
whoa.
did that too.
Very nice.
I love that.
We did
Some of
that.
us are missing that part.
Sweet and sugary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Well, okay, one more thing. When I was on my tour of Alaska and it was a Unitarian Universalist tour, at all the churches where they fed us dinner, we'd put all of our leftover food in these plastic buckets. And the people that were there would take it, divide it up and take it home to feed their chickens.
I've never seen those. Has anybody seen those cotton cloths?
No,
In a roll? That would be good.
Yeah.
We always had a
What
garden.
work like cotton almost.
We always had a garden.
So everything went to the garden.
Yeah, we ate out of the garden. My mother canned. And I remember my grandmother and she did similar things, had an aunt that was on a farm. And my family, we weeded and so on and so forth with that on the farm.
Yeah, you bet.
And
Grew up
Shields.
weeding.
And
And Shields and Peg, it looks like you both have something to share.
Go ahead, Peg.
I was just going to say, my parents could have been my grandparents. So they both lived through 2 world wars and the Depression, and their parents were immigrants. So we always raised the food. You didn't waste food. You carried the water for drinking into the house, and you raised animals. And for clothing, your good clothing was carefully stored aside because I lived on a farm. And your old clothing, you wore that around home. And we would laugh sometimes. My mother was complaining about, we didn't have any rags for cleaning. And my brother says, that's because we're wearing them. But always a very frugal, very frugal. And I learned that. And my husband came from the same sort of environment. And so we always did these frugal things, and I still do them.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then there is a culture clash when you marry someone who didn't grow up with that. So my mother-in-law always wanted us to spend more and do more, but I came from a very, what I call a thrifty family. Again, Depression era, been through the Depression, were poor immigrants on both my mother's and father's side. And they just didn't spend money on things, and they never got around to it. And it sort of passed off on me. So I know that I know I'm also thrifty, but Bree and I were talking at the shared, Bree's a generation different than me, but we talked about the food messages, I think kind of, to clean your plate and that type of thing, kind of, that carried through in many families. And then also we shared bath water, and didn't bathe frequently either. Like once a week, Saturday night bath. I grew up in the 60s, and that's the only day of the week I had a full body immersion. So.
Oh.
So true.
Things got a little better for us when we moved to town. It wasn't just the one big tub. Well, so lots of experience. Anybody else or?
Yeah, thank you. My memories of being a kid, I don't have any clear memories of much frugality there, but when I went to the monastery, it was very, very poverty driven, and we would brush off the tables after the meals with we called it a crummer, and we put it in a container, a cookie tray, we'd call it. And then any other goods that we had, food that had not the stuff that would spoil, but the dry goods, we'd put in that same cookie container. And once a month or so, we'd have crumb cookies, and they tasted really good. I learned how to make good crumb cookies. But we also accepted garbage from the local grocery stores. They brought it in on Saturday night. We sorted it out, and we ate a lot of it for vegetables. Yeah. And then you know, the poverty, frugality things were just unbelievable. They were kind of shocking to me, but it was real poverty. Not sure it was for the ecological reasons as much as it just for holy poverty. That's what drove that. So
Yeah. Well, so let's move on a little bit. There's a lot to talk about tonight, a lot of fun stuff. So going on to the next one, Flora Yang is trying to point out to us that some of the things that she mentioned in the opening, her opening words, are unattainable for the poor. And for lots of people who have homes to supply. Who, you know, got the food deserts nearby or don't have money. So it's not easy necessarily to have all these things that are necessary now to correct plastics and do this and that. I mean, now there's some expense to it. So that's a kind of irony. And I'm sure you loved, as I did, that was an interesting, her time in Palestine. This was interesting to her. And the whole science of making cabbage rolls, which I love, don't you? But it is, you're working with leaves the whole time and stuffing them with rice and maybe bits of ham or bits of whatever you have. It's delicate work. I'm sure they're good at it. And she observed that not a leaf was left unused, even not such a good one. They'd find a use for that. And then putting the water they'd use to clean the cabbages and stuff back in the garden. The whole thing, an act of conserving. So it's a call to the people that she's making here, that this whole ecofeminist concern is really amounts to a concern for the poor. And I have to say, this is a cross, you know, that we got because we used to contribute to this parish that the New Ulm diocese had founded and worked with in Guatemala. But it shows a peasant. It's handmade by someone from that parish. So it's carved to make Jesus look like a peasant from Guatemala. Seeing them on the cross or them having the suffering of poverty. And Jesus did, identifying with Jesus in their life. And from that, in Latin America, kind of overall, we have all learned the option for the poor, which I think now is widely held in Catholic social teaching as one of the principles. But it wasn't there before. We kind of learned it as sisters at our chapters when people came up from Peru, and the South American bishops after Vatican II really moved toward this as a group, the option for the poor. But it was also for people like, like Dom Helder Camara, who is kind of partners with one of our authors for today. The option for the poor, God's love extends to all, and that's the whole idea that the poorest must be taken care of right away, not last. But that's a basic demand, so basic it takes priority over other things. So we sort of learned it from our sisters in Peru, I think. It was a new term and kind of got to be a well-known one. And now, Laudate Si, back one. Pope Francis's encyclical on ecology, really connects the option for the poor and our commitment to the earth. That we're doing a lot of things, especially big businesses and stuff, that destroy the earth and makes it even harder for the poor. Or there's all this dumping of stuff where people can't fight it. So his integral ecology, that everything is connected, is chapter 4 in Love.jc. And she has some statistics about us, even in the US, the food deserts, we've heard about that before, I think. UNICEF internationally, 1.4 million people without, or who are having to walk for water, carry it, are water vulnerable. On the West Bank, where she was, Laura Yang, 180 families with no running water. I have to say, we always had running water. We had a well. You didn't.
We had the pump.
That's
what we thought.
We had a spigot in the kitchen. Yeah. Miracle, yeah.
I'm sure that statistic is a lot different now.
The one for Palestine.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes,
They don't have any
today.
water.
Yeah.
West Bank.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which just taking a right turn.
Yeah. Kathy.
Taking a right turn to, I was really impressed with Cindy McCain on CBS Sunday Morning yesterday. She was quite well spoken. She's the United Nations head of the food distribution, blah, blah. I can't remember the exactly name, but she was extremely well spoken and very diplomatic. Very cool. Worth watching. Because she was talking about food, she was talking about food distribution in Gaza.
You know, it was the first thing, poverty and food was the first thing that the millennial development goals kind of achieved. But these wars just undo it for those who are involved, totally undo it. So this reading for today emphasizes this. We have to have a everyday reawakening to love this whole connection, earth, God, people, our resources on earth, all connected. And I hope last week we talked a lot about Elizabeth Johnson's thinking about what a difference a theology that includes the Spirit makes. That we think our urges and feelings and senses of this and stirrings of regrets within us are something to pay attention to, that this is how the Spirit speaks to us and nudges and sustains. And before that, we were always praying for the Spirit to come from above, come from someplace. Spirit's always there, not just when you're good. That's next week. No, it's a couple weeks yet. So, in the article we read too, she talked about the number of times mothers in different parts in the world have organized to stop this or that, trash dumping. I don't know, Carmen isn't here tonight, but what finally stopped the East Side pollution with 3M.
Carmen Barsotti.
The mothers of East Los Angeles did stop the prisons. All the people, the Native people and the people who went to join them didn't stop the pipeline. But there have been organizations to try and deal with some of this and often effective. I love the Scary Moms of Pakistan. That's kind of fun. So this is not something that's strictly in the US. people band together, have learned to do that, or have learned to act together in good ways, which is kind of what liberation theology is all about. So are there other things that touched you in the fruit reading? Didn't say much about the desert mothers, really. They're kind of known for extreme poverty, more like the nuns. But they're also known for kind of trying to explore the inner life of what's there, what you feel if you fast, what really sustains you, what can sustain you. A lot of early psychology in that.
Oh, hold on. So folks in the room, when you speak, try to hold the microphone like you're gonna eat it. And then say your name before you speak so that folks online can tell who we are.
This is Carol. I was struck by the encouraging group action as a way to deal with the anxiety or depression that comes from feeling like individual action isn't enough. And that group action not only can bring together ideas, but also help us deal with the feeling of not doing enough.
I see that Peg has something to share. Go ahead, Peg.
I was going to say that I really liked her emphasis that the eco practices must be those that are available to people of all different economic levels. Sometimes the eco practices that we're doing, we're buying these fancy things. People who are poor really can't afford to do that. And I also thought when she's speaking of the desert mothers, I think as much she was speaking of the asceticism of our own mothers who saved and gardened and whatnot. So in some ways they were our desert mothers as well. And in this, as I read this chapter, I would recommend reading the last paragraph. She made a really nice summary of her thinking in the last paragraph.
Peg, did you know what page that's on? 16.
Yeah, 16.
Page 16, sure.
The whole last paragraph or the
Well, you don't have to read it.
organized following the mothers of Los Angeles and Lahore.
Yeah, it's just in our shared grief over the world's ecological crisis, we encounter the poverty and vulnerability of our individual human experience. Anyway, so I just was going to recommend people to read that particular paragraph because I thought it was a good one.
One thing about my mother and grandmother is that they were club women. I don't know that that's the case much anymore, but the club women did things like get things in the playground in the park or things that needed to happen in their town. They would do that. I'll bring grandma's little inspiration someday because it's quite good. I was going to bring it tonight, but I have to find it first. So let's move on to Rosemary, Radford, Reuther. Yeah. You've probably heard her name. I think if she were alive today, she'd be, what, in her late 80s. Oh, yeah. So she was writing Sexism and God Talk when I hit the divinity school. Very good. Ia and God. She's really was a historian. And we're going to see that as we look at what she is quoted for tonight. My whole idea of including the ecological theologians is that they've been around a long time. So look at the date back on the 1983 on that. So the early feminists were thought to be kind of too well-to-do and coming out of the high-level schools in the East. And then Latin America started talking after Vatican II in the 60s about the poor and the option for the poor. And things began to change, and it became feminism got to be womanism and liberation and all that joined together. So that it put the poor into the picture. And she did a good job of doing that. She taught at Garrett for a long time. She was Catholic, and her view on birth control were not, real good as far as bishops were concerned. So she was disallowed from ever teaching in a Catholic school. But as a young feminist, she was in Birmingham. She kind of was changed by that experience, by the bullet holes across the dorm front when they were down in Alabama. And then she taught after she got her degrees going for 10 years at Howard University, which is a Black college. So she had some hands-on experience, which always tends to be transformative. It was really kicked a lot of ideas around. So let's look at some of those. Have you heard of her?
Yes.
Yeah.
She was the first person I read a National Catholic Reporter came.
Jackie says she was the first person she read when the National Catholic Reporter came. That's right, she had a column.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was always wonderful.
Always wonderful column. Yeah. So she's showing her historian idea, history, and the classics. So she goes all the way back to the Babylonian creation story, which typically has Tiamat kind of turned into halfway a dragon or a couple of dragons. If you look at the art, you can look online and see it. And Marduk, her great-grandson, who volunteers to end the reign of Tiamat. And Tiamat is identified with the sea and its power, storms and waves and power. And Marduk kills her by getting the wind to help and blows her up. I mean, literally blows and blows and blows, and then pierces her with an arrow. And then uses the top half for the sky and the bottom half for the land and earth. So she goes back to that, and rightly so in a way, because some of that imagery goes all the way through the Old Testament. And it goes into the Son of Man imagery. I have to do this sometime in the next few years before I'm gone. The Son of Man imagery in the New Testament is this transformed into an image of service rather than triumph and blowing up. But it all kind of comes from that. We had Baal as a god in Canaan, and then we have that image of Daniel of the human one receiving power and dominion from the old gods. And then there's a lot of fancy among the disciples for this image. And Jesus keeps hammering away that it's an image of service and to transform it into an image of service. And it becomes a vehicle where they typically, in a saying, the Son of Man will be turned over, and it's a way of telling the good news. It becomes a vehicle of Jesus' story. Even before the high priest and all, that's what he says. Are you the Son of the living God? Yes, he said, you say so. And then quotes the Son of Man. So that is the theology partly of the early church out of their experience of God. Totally transformed. Because Christ, after all, is a kingly image. And this one has quite a history. So Radford Reuther starts back in the Sumerian times and the Babylonian times. Then she goes on, like Plato. Christianity imagines the soul in relationship to the body as man controlling power over female identified body and passions that could be controlled, that are to be controlled. So we did a lot of that last week, talking about Beth Johnson's work, that we have to undo that Platonic understanding of the world, that there's kind of a perfect world and we have gradations of it. The man has the most, gets a good 90%. You know, women get maybe 50 of the abilities to be in the world. And slaves and animals are even worse. So from spiritual to material, from the cerebral to the physical, there's a split. And the spirit, the soul survives in that framework, and the body doesn't. So that body-spirit split that reverberates into the cultural pyramid. And in Hebrew, I'm sure you've heard all of the things about the man being born first and then the woman. But in Hebrew, the Adam, it's not a first name. It means the human one. And it's a way to remember the saying. It's the Adam who's part of the Adamah, which is a word for earth. The earthling comes from the earth, or the human from the humus. We could do it in English. So in the first part of the story, in chapters 2, 3, the human is the earthling. And there's no woman until the invention of sex, which is secondary. So that's Phyllis Bird's writing. Then the early Christian movements seem to have a liberating sense, that the baptismal thing, much loved and quoted from Galatians 3:28, kind of one of the citations it's nice to know by heart. In Christ there are no more male and female, Jew or Greek, slave and free. So, but it didn't last. It doesn't last even in the Bible. By the time you get to the later letters, women should be in their part, be doing their, should be silent in church, or they should know their place. They may be equal in faith, But they need that famous part of Corinthians that man has his center in God and the woman the center in Christ, and all are in God. So you got to be connected to a man in this cultural Christianity that sort of subverts the original equality in baptism. So as Rosemary Reuther's laying out what's happened in history. And next. I thought this deserved a lovely picture. Which is the soul, which is the body. So we are still in our processions when someone dies, talking about the soul leaving the body. You know, we haven't worked with that yet. And the sisters over at Cronlett Village. It's a case. So for eco-feminists that want to see the world differently and see it no more through the eyes of these ancient ways of doing it, do not see the soul and body as separate, but see ourselves as spirit people, spirit humans, one body, spirits, really connected. And with that, of course, goes the male identified mind as better than the female identified body, which allows men to think men or women are always the cause of their desires. So they are now trying in ecofeminist thought to see our own connections. To everything else that evolution brings forth. To see everybody as a relation, earth creatures, even the cosmic whole, our place, the place where we live. I feel that every morning when I take a look at Venus out the window, always there. One of the advantages of our apartment, good view of Venus. Okay. So this is Rosemary talking. Our consciousness does not set us radically apart from the rest of the life forms on Earth. Rather, there is a continuity of matter-energy dynamics, moving from inorganic energy to life, then to awareness of life, and then to self-reflecting consciousness in organisms with progressively more complex brains. So evolution makes a difference. Our knowledge of that now hasn't changed the perception for everyone, but there it is. Next one. I like to, I just put up sayings that seem to me to be key points, and the whole idea is to kind of jar your memory of what you've read. In case you read it a few days ago, if you just read it on the way over, that's one thing, but now I don't know if you agree with this, but the immortality lies not in the preservation of our individual consciousnesses as a separate substance, but in the miracle and mystery of endlessly recycled matter energy out of which we arose and into which we return.
No heaven.
no heaven for Rosemary. But she's somewhere now, so we could be hearing from her.
She's endlessly recycled.
Well, our only and true home is what we know. They're coming out of their experience, but it gets to take into account that our experience does not unload everything there is. There's more. Words are not adequate. But Rosemary, I don't know, she had a lot of trouble with the church. She was willing to say a miracle and mystery of endlessly recycled matter energy.
Do you think she has trouble with the church or trouble with the language that is so unresponsive to what we know now because of evolution, and now even because of the new sphere? You know, we've got a whole different ballgame, and we're still talking about essence and existence and God is someone up there. I mean, we can't help but think that because we say those words over and over again, including our Father who art in heaven. So where do you go with the main prayer of the whole Catholic and Christian church, really? I don't know. I think it's so hard.
I think it takes a long time, just a long time to traverse all that difference between language and what we know is true.
Experience.
Yeah, it just takes a long time. It's like this whole thing about becoming more saving and and more ecologically aware in our own life. I realize in reading this, boy, I'm really sloppy about that. And it's just going along with our culture. And so it's kind of like a whole cultural change. And that takes a long time, just of the patriarchal domination paradigm. That we don't move very fast in that.
Yeah. So true. Not fast enough for our single lifetimes.
No.
That's one of the frustrating things, isn't it, to be in such a profound time of change.
But we all can contribute in a tiny way.
All right. Next. Well, then she is the one who introduces Ivone Gebara. And Ivone Gebara, I think, is the Brazilian Elizabeth Johnson. She just is such a writer, isn't she? So a lot of people have made fun of the Trinity. She isn't making funny so much, but she's the two divine males with each other, mediated by the Spirit. So she wants us to see a symbolic expression of the basic dynamic of life in that process, in that threesome. And something interrelational, something we can't really see or put in words. And then she talks about, this is what she appreciates in Ivone Gebara, that life is interrelational creativity that exists on every level of reality. And that's revealed in the cosmos as a whole process of unfolding and in the interaction of the planets and galaxies we live with. And as Earth shows us that dynamic interrelationship interrelational process of life unfolding in the biosphere. So up above in the cosmic, all around in the cosmic, on Earth in the biosphere, And we'll have to get together and think about the noosphere
She really
now that we're living in it.
She really defined perichoresis there.
Yeah,
She really defined. Repeat that. The dance.
the dance, the interrelationship of three. Yes,
So just the whole idea that it's not about dominating.
I love that whole idea of community, not dominant unity. And I think I learned that only after I entered the convent. And I think it makes a lot more sense. Community than killing.
so you understand that language, that we're in a different place than participation in percentage of spirit and body that's kind of platonic into understanding that interrelations are what we're made of. That's the stuff of our energy, what impels us, our loves, our actions, our interrelationships, and that's what's unfolded in creation. That was nice when we did the God's ecstasy, to move from the physics of the first 5 billion years, and then to move into the chemistry that built all the way to DNA and not IRA, but what's the RNA and DNA, which are the little trains that bring in the right amount of proteins. And then on to the biology of it all, that it just unfolds. So these processes, that we weren't just born in one way. So this is what Rosemary Radford Reuther appreciates in Ivone Gebara, that the Trinitarian dynamic of life is both creational and salvation. It both creates new life and seeks to correct distorted relations and reestablish life-giving, loving relations. The name of the Trinitarian God as sustaining, redeeming is I think that's a typo, is a sustaining, redeeming mix of cosmic, planetary, social, and personal life. And her name is Sophia, divine wisdom, which is a late way of thinking that things are much more connected. You remember how John's gospel beginning was a word, and the word was made flesh, and what else? Well, anyway. And she sees Gebara seeing Jesus in quite a different way than we often see him as a prophetic figure who wants to break through the cycle of violence, takes the side of the victims, which many of the poor and the victimized have often seen, and called those empowered to repent and enter into a new community of mutual service.
Hey there.
So thoughts.
Nice.
Good picture. Let's take 5 minutes or so, just a little time, to talk about what touches you about this. What touched you in your reading? You kind of have a feel for what grabbed me.
So we can. It looks at my.
I'll try.
You're here, but you're not really here.
If they're gonna be here, I've gotta pay attention to this.
You know, she does.
The last sweater.
That last little sentence. That's on the screen right now.
I got some of it, I didn't get it all. Trinitarian dynamic of life is both creation and salvation. So we always think of it as salvation, but it's both.
mass disillusion.
Yeah.
It's illusion, you know, to a certain, on a certain
So
level,
we've
we're separate,
kind of
but on another
spent
level, we're
Rosemary,
not separate at all.
Radford,
Yeah.
Reuther.
It, you know,
And in
so
some
we have,
ways,
there was that.
she's
reading-
such a clear writer. I'm glad to spend a little more time with her.
Yeah, there's that.
And she's such a poet,
Of that one.
such a good writer.
This one, the fatter one.
So she just really spells things out right from the beginning. Well, this is,
As we think we are.
I have a picture of herself,
Oh, sorry.
Who is it?
Rosemary,
Oh,
or
Ivone Gebara.
Ivone Gebara. Yeah. Ivone Gebara was in Recife, Brazil, which is in the north. She was in the diocese, and a person who worked with Helder Camara, who was one of the people who started small Christian communities and who pulled people into those communities to act for their common good, especially the poor. And they were highly resolved. And I have to say that we had a retreat with her. Therese and I, when we were doing the magazines, went to
House Springs.
to House Springs for that to be with Ivone Gebara. But we also went to Loyola for a thing called Christogenesis, about how the church is born in these small communities. And the whole process that we had used got named kind of by starting with life and going to the gospel and then circling back to life. So we went to Thunder Bay, and the Bishop of Thunder Bay had gone down to be with Helder Camara and learned that. And we went to what's, I think, one of the best conferences I ever was at, the Cattery Conference in Thunder Bay, for people on up into the Arctic, because the community was so strong. I mean, you could believe in what the the power of the interrelationships with people. So she was in part of a movement, really, and lived among the poor. She's a sister. I think she's an Augustinian kind of sister. I don't know, anyway, she is a sister. And she's often lived in poor places. And she also, in writing for poor women, encountered issues over birth control and abortions and things, and she got silenced. And her silencing, she had to go to Belgium for 2 years and could not make public appearances, was silenced and kind of kept out of the public realm. And so she went to Louvain to school and did a second doctorate. And oh my.
Yeah, oh my.
I've got a second PhD.
Yeah, I mean, really, she thought a lot out there. It's the story is a little bit like, sometimes I think about the nuns, you go one step and, you know, you get pushed back, but then that step kind of, it's a step. It kind of lasts eventually, and then another step where you get out where you can make trouble. So she's talking, I mean, she is really forthright about issues that are pretty core. So a secret code, the Trinity. The Trinity, as well as the words Father, Son, and Spirit, are like a secret code that needs to be broken and translated anew. When I speak of them as code, I mean that they do not refer us immediately to our own world experience. I have jumped one ahead, but that's all right. Look at this one. Because she's talking about us, that this stuff we're caught in comes from us. You know, so the Platonic, it's a long lost philosophy now. Interesting about Heraclitus. Anybody else, when you took the history of philosophy, think, oh, I think maybe Heraclitus really gets it, that it's burning and flowing and Imagine that, not chunk, 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 chunk. But she says it's we ourselves who construct our interpretation of science and wisdom and knowledge. It's we ourselves who today affirm one thing and change tomorrow. It's we or have to change tomorrow, as we have to know. It's we who affirm the image of God as warrior avenger or tender compassionate figure. And it is we through our ancestors and traditions who have constructed the Trinity in three different persons to portray it as we develop. Oh, her point, as three different persons in one God. So we can change our ways for portraying it if we have developed it. When we change our perceptions as science has changed them for us. So I tell you, we had once when we were quoting something from scripture, or maybe it was from liturgy or something, the person who reviewed our catechetical materials thought the layout should be, it was not only the words that were sacred, but the layout on the page. Really? So now to the secret code. So that's what I was reading. Those words, the words of the Trinity, don't refer immediately to our own world. Now, her first point is what we are saying comes from our world, but it isn't our world today. It was our world in the time when educated new Christians hammered out what they wanted to say about who Jesus was. Now we've got, not only does the earth go around the sun, but we've all evolved together. So we have new things, new perceptions. These are symbols that refer to life experiences. The Father, the Son, not the Spirit so much, so it doesn't get picked up as much. But their symbolism has grown hazy and been absolutized within a closed, eminently masculine and more or less arcane theoretical system. Oh, I love it.
And it takes care of that.
Well, you can see she's getting a ticket for Louvain. We need to grasp the fundamental experience that underlies, I just love that she took this on, that underlies the Christian belief that God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We need to ask whether these are the most useful expressions, the closest to our own experience. But the effort that's there has to be continued, I think is what she wants to say. So the next one. Now we've gone from the secret code, no, to what does the number 3 mean? So we're in a new moment of human history, cosmic history, and we need to re-examine our experience and reconstruct the meanings that we hold near and dear to and help us to live on, they help us. But what does the number 3 mean? The starting point for social life. One more than 2. And she makes the point it could have been 6 or 7, but in our culture, there's agreement that the number 3 symbolizes unity and multiplicity.
I disagree.
Kathy.
Kathy, yes?
Oh, I just said I disagree. I think it should be, if you take the concept of it, okay, this is very mathematical. If you take the concept of a triangle which is probably not a great analogy, and turn it into the honeycomb symbol, you have a whole different concept of how trinities or three groups of three can be combined together into a circle of different pods, sides connected. I don't, and I don't know what I would put at the middle, but I don't know. So that was just my thought. I think Trinity is limiting.
Yeah, okay. So her point here is that in our lived lives, people experience the awesome multiplicity of things. That's what you're saying. The plurality, the great differences among them, bewildering transformations over time, the fragility and transience, the change, the process, the blend of life and death and life. So the Trinity symbolized by the number 3 means in practice thousands and millions, in other words, infinity.
Joan, it looks like Marilyn has something to share.
I think that in Trinity you get the idea of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And whatever becomes your synthesis of the former two ideas is now your new thesis. And that continues on and on, where you get thesis, an antithesis, and then a synthesis, but then you keep on going. And that's why you get infinity, because you're always reconstructing from one idea, the opposite idea, and then a coalescence of it, which becomes your new point of taking off. And you just keep on going through that cycle.
Yes. Well, I'm going to keep going. So in another category, the Trinity is an expression of our history, the human history, which is both tragic and challenging, but it is a unified Trinity, as if it were unity. We were expressing in that unity, we were expressing our own desire for harmony and communion with all that exists. So that life is a process. We have understandings, but we want to go beyond them. Every understanding is, as you are saying. So Trinity is the word that points to our common origin, our shared substance, our universal breathing within the immense diversity that surrounds each and every one of us, each unique and original, a path along the great road of life. Trinity is also about ourselves, about what we know and live out in our own story, as Marilyn was pointing out. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and on and on. Mm-hmm. So those are my words. Nothing, no thing. This was my discovery in God's ecstasy at one point, being alone up on the North Shore, that God was no thing. Not a person, not a substance, no thing. So, but we're in it all. It's totally changed my whole idea of God. Everything kind of went. And what was there is just being in, breathing with everyone else and seeing and loving and just being a part of the whole. So the Trinity, she makes a clear point here, is not a being in itself. Not even the little Irish trifoil or the Trinity we worship lives in us and we live in it. It's language, it's words that try to explain the unexplainable, the ineffable. Father, Son, and Spirit are not of divine stuff as opposed to our human stuff. Rather, they are relationships we experience metaphor that are, something must be wrong, that there are relationships we human beings experience and express metaphorically rather than metaphysically. Metaphysics always talks about being, but so the patriarchal language took symbolic language, which expressed, this is another really good part, took symbolic language, which expresses all that is deepest in human beings, and eliminated its symbolic, musical, and poetic forms, along with its language of inference, of inflection, and of deep aspirations. It petrified this language and went on to endorse the idea that what it says exists in the most literal sense.
Say that again.
Page 153. The patriarchal language took the Father, Son, and Spirit, took symbolic language, which expresses all that is deepest in human beings, and eliminated its symbolic, musical, and poetic forms, along with its language of inference, of inflection, of deep aspirations, and it petrified this language and went on to endorse the idea that what it says exists in the most literal form. That's what fell away, I think, from the no thing. All that effort to talk about substance and essence and the metaphysical vocabulary. Trinity is an image that suggests something other than what literal language can offer, a reality we call transcendence that is beyond that which can be spoken of. It's always going to fail. The theologians say that all the time. So I'm going to skip the next one. I want to be on this one, yeah.
Oh,
What was wrong with that one? That one looked good.
All right. Go back. He often sees the dark side long before I do. They'll go back. That evil is the growing dysfunctionality in both personal and social life that leads to the narcissistic cultivation of my own individuality and my ecclesiastical, political, or business interests. Evil is the ascendancy of one sex over the other. Evil is the excess or abundance that's held back and hoarded. Evil is the idolatry of the individual, of the pure race, of the messianic people, of the empire that dominates by insinuating itself into everything. Guess who? Things that appear negative, though, can develop the capacity for loving others. Human history bears that witness too. That things can change. So she ends then. Might it be possible to leave behind this crude and highly patriarchal, hierarchical, materialistic, individualistic, dependent, and class-biased understanding of God and of the Trinity?
Yes, let's do that.
What page is that? What page is that?
Yeah, what page is that? I gotta underline.
We need to spend a little more time with all those words together.
I know, I
Can you send us
I
one?
love that. I'll find it for you.
Thank you.
It's not in that book, but it's in the Gebara book. Yeah.
The problem is we don't leave it behind as long as the liturgy is happening.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do.
We don't leave it behind as long as the liturgy is happening, Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. It's the same language, it's the same thing. The homily at least could possibly be an opportunity for explaining things, but when do we ever hear that? You know, where something is explained as, we don't know that Jesus said this. All translation is interpretation. You know, you can't just print it in red and say that's it.
I would say, you know, maybe if we just eased up a little bit. I like the idea of metaphor. I mean, when you think of it, isn't the sign of the cross just a metaphor? I mean, look how people use it. They use it when they're scared. You know, they just do like this. They use it when they're baseball players and they want to get a hit. They make the sign of the cross. I think religion must be full of these kind of metaphors that we don't need to try to make it understandable like this, like we have done with the Trinity. What about, I know I agree with you so much, Kathy, as long as we keep these words alive, as long as we bow to the patriarchy, which is what we do when we're Catholics, then there's no hope for us. We can understand, but making it available to anybody else, not.
I have this is Bree online. Can you hear me?
Yeah, come on, Bree.
So I recently took a class on offered by Robert Jonas on the Holy Trinity as spiritual practice. I think the title of his book is My Dear Far Nearness. He's a psychologist, but he talks about the experience of Trinity as a spiritual practice, but the cross specifically, he describes as let's see, I am living in eternity, so this connection to the eternal, and time is passing through. So I am living in eternity and time is passing through, and we live here at the center of time and eternity, which I thought was beautiful.
Thank you for that. Well, she says the answer to that question is in the affirmative, an essential step both for the present and for the future. I couldn't agree more, Kathy. So what are we going to do about it?
Well, what a lot of people are doing is stop coming. That's what I think about. Because it doesn't work.
Stop coming.
Or come here.
And I.
You know, liturgy is more than just the spoken words. There's music in the liturgy, and that's where the power breaks through. And we talked about musical and other kinds of expression being eliminated from this particular theology. So
You know, when I was a kid, I remember being in mass. I don't remember what was said. I remember hundreds of children singing together in this huge church. We had one organist. So there's music, and we have wonderful musicians who have written wonderful music since the end of Vatican II, and many of them are women. Bernadette Farrell and or Lori True.
Yes.
Listen to her theology.
Is Laurie here? No. No. Is it a different Lori?
Is that our Lori? No.
No.
She's in the hot.
Lord God.
Her daughter is. Yeah.
Is that the slide you want, Joan?
No.
What words were you singing, Suzanne, when you were a kid? Holy God, we praise thy name.
I don't know, maybe we even sang in Latin. That was,
Yeah, we
it
did.
was a long time
You're
ago.
right, it was beautiful, but the
Yes.
words are these words that we're trying to make sense of still. And they don't, and most of the songs today.
Yeah.
There's some music, I agree with you, Henry Carroll.
Oh, we should be. I have to say, in my public high school, we had a Lutheran choir director from Concordia, so our high school was as good as either St. Olaf or Concordia. We did the Messiah. We sang all the Lutheran music all the time. It was wonderful.
You want to say?
Yeah, my comment about the music is that we are still dealing with Jesus paying the price for our sins, Anselian kind of philosophy. And so we're, although I enjoy the music immensely and the harmonies, the words are still arcane.
Okay, a new word. Yeah. Well, it's almost time here. I thought some of this was such poetry. You should just end by listening. We are constantly being invited to return to our roots, to commune with the earth, with all peoples, and with all living things, and to realize that transcendence is not a reality out there, isolated in itself, superior to all that exists, but a transcendence within us, among us, in the earth, in the cosmos, and everywhere. This is a transcendence that is here and now, among those who are like us and different from us, among plants and animals, rivers and seas. The transcendence invites us to reach beyond the limits of our selfishness and respond to the call to a new collective, ethical behavior centered on saving all of life. The transcendence is a canticle, a symphony unceasingly played by the infinite creativity of life.
Did you say the page number?
167.
Not that book, Linda, the other article.
The article that.
I thought she was on the.
The Gebara article, right?
Gebara article.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so we go our ways. And next week, Andrea.
Yay, okay.
So,
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Bye.
Good to see you.
Thank you, everyone.
What was it that I said that I knew nothing about that you